there, everyone. Happy Thursday. Welcome to So What, the Marketing Analytics and Insights live show. I'm Katie, joined by Chris and John. Howdy, fellas.
Hello.
Hello.
It almost kind of looks like you just kind of like patted him on the head.
That's tough with the lower corner. This is not a great Hollywood square box I'm in.
It's not. Circle does not get the square. This week, you never saw the show, Chris. This week, we're talking about the generative AI transmedia framework, which is definitely not catchy. But for a very long time, Chris and I have used the video first transmedia framework, which you can see on the screen. You can see starts with video, and then basically it's all just about repurposing, because we're all trying to do more with less these days. Less budget, less people, less technology, less ideas, whatever the thing is that you have less of, you're trying to do more of with it. And we've been teaching the video first transmedia framework for a long time. So basically you start with a video and then you pull it apart. But now with generative AI, you don't necessarily have to start with video. Having a video is great, but really starting with a good idea is most of what you need. So today, this week on the live stream, we're going to do a couple things. One, we're going to talk through how to repurpose your content, but we're also going to take the opportunity to overhaul the Trust Insights transmedia framework into the generative AI transmedia framework, so that it's, so we're hip with the times, we're current. What do the kids say, Chris and John?
I don't know. I don't listen to my children.
You got some Riz. This is off the hook.
There you go. We're gonna give the transmedia framework some Riz. Yes, I said that. You're welcome. You guys are gonna miss me for the next 2 weeks. Chris and John will host the show for the next couple weeks. I'll be out. I'll be working on my catchphrases.
Hello, fellow cool kids.
I was just gonna say, Steve Buscemi, you nailed it. Hello, fellow youth.
All right. So, Chris, where are we starting with this overhaul?
Well, unsurprisingly, you should probably, with anything, start with the 5 Ps, which is what is the purpose of your content marketing? Who are the people you're trying to reach? How do you currently do your content transformations? We can talk about the different platforms and the sort of the best of the lot for what's available today, which changes on a day-to-day basis. And then ultimately, how do we know that you did the thing? So I would say, Katie, for you as the person who is running things, what are those first and last bookends? What is the purpose of your content marketing? And then how do we measure that what you're doing is even working?
There's more than one purpose. And so what I would probably do in this scenario is I would break out the 5 Ps into the different stages of the customer journey. So the purpose is to create content for each stage of the customer journey, for the Trust Insights customer journey. And then I would take it a step further. We don't have to do this on this episode, but I would then have a 5 Ps for each stage. So I would have a 5 Ps for awareness, and who are the people in that, and what is the process for disseminating content to that group, and then what platforms do they receive content on, so on and so forth. But at a high level, the purpose of our content marketing is to create content for our audience to meet them where they are. And then, the people are people in awareness, people in consideration, people in evaluation, and then also our team. So you want internal and external people. So who is it for and who's doing it? And on our team, that's pretty much everyone. Process, how do you create content? And that's what we're going to talk about. Platform, what tools are we using? And performance, did we meet people where they are? And so this is where we would want to decide, what metrics are we using to measure success? Which is why I like to break it out into the different customer journey stages, because you're going to have different KPIs for different stages. So for awareness, it's probably website visits. For consideration, it's probably newsletter signups or white paper downloads. For for purchase, it's contact us and so on and so forth. So like we would want to do all of that work, but at a high level, we're building content for our audience.
Okay, which makes sense. So let's take a piece of content, because the original transmedia framework, the idea was this: you would pursue the transmedia framework by starting with video because it had the most information within a video. Like this live stream, there is audio, there is text implicit in the audio by what we're saying, there is video, and there are still images. And so what we're saying with generative AI is now, instead of having to start with the video, you can start anywhere with any piece of content and turn it into other forms of content, especially if you have access to pretty decent tools. So I think what we'll do today, we'll take one of Katie's LinkedIn posts and try to start assessing it and then ultimately remixing it into other forms of content. So the post in question will be Katie's Ranty Pants post from yesterday.
Yeah.
And this is pretty decent, right?
I think so. Are you asking me if I wrote a good post? The answer is yes. It's amazing. Are you asking if it's long enough? So I guess, what do you mean by decent? Can you define that for me?
In this case, decent literally means you're okay with us using this as the example for today.
Oh, yeah. Of course I am. I put it out on LinkedIn. It's public, so it's fair game.
Okay.
I thought you were asking me if I thought it was good, and I was like, it's a silly question. Of course, I think it's outstanding.
All right. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to try to understand what is the heart of the piece of content itself. What does the content do? So let's go and start by saying exactly this. Examine this LinkedIn post from Trust Insights CEO, Katie Robert. What is the core message of the post, and what is it intended to communicate? Who in our audience is it targeted towards reaching? Now, this is not sufficient by itself. Even when I put the post in, this is not going to be sufficient. What we need to add is we need to add some people. And the people that we want to attach to this are going to be I'm going to add the entire Trust Insights sales playbook from 2 live streams ago that we did. This contains 5 different ICPs and 7 different buyer personas. So we're asking Gemini to identify this. In fact, I'll be specific: which ICPs, which personas. Now what we want to do is we want to distill out the idea itself first, because if we don't have that, then not much else matters. So let's see what. Granted, we have to remember Gemini now has to read a 154-page book very quickly to determine what is in here and how does it line up. So let's turn on the show thinking so we can see what's going on. Dissecting Katie's post, clarifying her message, refining audience insights, deep dive into the post, unpacking its implications. The core intent is companies that hastily adopted generative AI without a proper strategy are now facing significant challenges. The targets posts: ICP1, the data-driven enterprise; ICP2, the growth-focused mid-market company; and ICP5, the niche solution seeker. The personas: strategic Sarah, analytical Alex, operational Olivia, and skeptical Samantha. How does that read so far?
It reads like I know our audience pretty well.
Okay. Let's say, which of these ICPs and personas is the best fit for Katie's post as the intended audience? Because obviously it fits all of them, but we want to know which one is the best fit.
Yeah.
If you don't have a sales playbook or ideal customer profiles, this doesn't work. You can try to wing it, but it's not going to go very well. But
you can reach out and contact John, who's below me. I'm going to pat him on the head now. You can contact John, and he can get you set up, and we can help you build these things.
So we now have best fit ICP, data-driven enterprise, and strategic Sarah as the marketing leaders. Those are the 2 things that in our sales playbook, this fits the best. Now, here's a question. What forms of content would someone like strategic Sarah like to receive? Obviously, LinkedIn, we're all on LinkedIn and stuff like that, but what kind of content would this person resonate with of the major content types. So if we go back to the framework, back then there were 4 types of content: video, audio, images, and text. Right? Today, it's more than that. It's video, audio, images, text, and interactive. So there's sort of 5 major groups now. So we need to figure out of these different of these personas, which format is going to reach them best. So we're going to say, based on the knowledge from the sales playbook, because we do have things like media habits in there, and your own background knowledge of these 5 categories, which format is most likely to resonate with strategic Sarah? Video, short; video, long; audio, still images; text, interactives. Let's see what it comes up with.
What's interesting about this approach is with the first version of the video first transmedia framework, we were taking any video, doesn't matter what it was, any video, and pulling it apart into all of those different pieces, regardless of who it was for. We were just like, let's just stretch it as far as it goes. It doesn't matter, the audience will figure that out after. Now, with generative AI and the sales playbook and the ICPs and the personas, and within those, their preferred ways of receiving information again. And, kidding aside, if you want help building out something that robust, we can help you. Now you can actually be more thoughtful because time is short. We all have a lot to do. And trying to create all of those different versions of content just isn't realistic anymore. You don't have the time to do it because we're creating so much content. We have so many people we have to reach. How do we focus it? I really appreciate how we're approaching this time.
We got the tools. We may as well use it. So from Strategic Sarah, again, based on our ICPs, based on our sales playbook, this is what's most likely to resonate. Text: Sarah is time poor. She's a time poor executive, so she needs to be able to scan quickly to gauge relevance and move on. Then other formats: a secondary, interactives, and interactive tools such as an ROI calculator or a simple AI readiness assessment. I wonder where she could get one of those.
If only we had such a thing. Ta-da!
Exactly. Could be highly effective. It provides immediate personalized value and aligns with their need for data-driven tools. The playbook's mention of an ICP interactive demo confirms the value of this approach. Audio podcasts. This format is also highly effective for reaching Sarah. The playbook explicitly notes that podcasts like Marketing Over Coffee are significant lead drivers. Sarah can consume this content passively during the commute or while multitasking, making an excellent channel. Still images, charts, infographics. These are best used as a component within text-based content. Video short can be effective. Video long, least likely to resonate with her because she doesn't have time for a 30 to 60-minute video. So if we think about this, when you look at all the sales pitches in your inbox, like, hey, check out this webinar, and then you go through and you look at the sales clip and go, oh, well.
Well, and then this awful trend of people just blindly putting meetings on your calendar. Like, nowhere in here does this say she wants to sit and talk with somebody. She has little time. She has to make decisions quickly. So, she's not going to sit through a meeting.
So let's say, using the canvas. Actually, before we leave to the canvas, let's think through how we could transform Katie's post into a single page infographic and story that would resonate with Sarah. How would you go about this? Come up with 3 different ideas for this, ranked by how well they'll resonate with Sarah. So we want to do some ideation. Like, what are some ideas? And it may turn out that all the ideas suck. That's okay, because they will almost certainly stimulate, well, what if we did it this way? Let's turn on the thinking so we can see what's going on behind the scenes. Developing infographic concepts. Exploring visual metaphors, refining the bridge concept, prioritizing infographic concepts, coming up with ideas, finalizing the concept, the bridge, and the health check. I'm focusing on it. Let's see. All right.
So I have a question for you. As you're coming up with these different content ideas, would this also be an opportunity to give generative AI some of your other knowledge blocks? Like, so for example, the Trust Insight Style Guide, or, if you're doing visuals, or, if you're trying to mirror my style, like my writing style knowledge block, is that where this kind of stuff would go?
Absolutely, yes. You would want to provide that. In fact, yeah, you would also probably want to find some real data to go with this as well, so that
Perhaps.
it is fact-based. But this sounds pretty interesting. The infographic is visually split into 3 sections. On the far left is the dark, stormy island labeled stalled AI chaos. On the far right is a bright, sunny island named predictable AI-driven ROI. Sections 1, 2, and 3. So that's one concept, the bridge to ROI. The second concept is the AI marathon, a split screen of 2 paths, the running untrained and how to run a marathon the right way, and the finish line. And then the AI initiative health check, which is ranked effective. It's a medical analogy. It says of these 3, the bridge to ROI is the best fit for Sarah.
Interesting. What do you think, John?
Yeah, that's, it always seems like the ones that I like best are always the ones that fail. Like, I'm totally the wrong audience for this. So yeah, seeing as I'm thinking that bridge to ROI sounds pretty good, probably the health checker one is the way to go.
Well, I would honestly, Chris, I would be interested if you would put my writing style knowledge block in this, because I'm absolutely going to use the outputs and post these on LinkedIn over the next couple of weeks. So we might as well make the most of them.
All right, let's find Katie's writing style. Yes, system instructions for writing Katie. How to write like Katie. All right.
Yeah,
Well,
this would be funny to see it, if it takes a totally different spin on these now and it comes up with something that, hits harder.
but I also want to sort of point out we're doing something that's very meta. On the live stream, we're demonstrating how to do generative AI first transmedia content repurposing, while I'm going to repurpose the content that we create on the live stream. And so, like, it's all we're practicing what we preach. So we might as well. Yeah, but it's we're doing the thing. It's not just an example. It's we're actually going to be using the stuff that we're creating. And so this is, we're recording the live stream, and then we're going to take the output from the live stream and actually put it out in, the public space on LinkedIn. I think that's actually pretty cool. And that saves me a bunch of time.
All right. So we will probably also want to grab our brand style guide as well, because that would be helpful to have. Let me see if I can. Well, let's grab Katie's writing style, because that's going to govern how Katie writes. So there's that knowledge block. And then for our brand style guide, where did I put that?
And again, as you're thinking about repurposing your content, having all of this foundational information created and saved, that's what's going to save you the time. I mean, that's true of sort of any of this development. Is if you do the work up front to gather the requirements, do the 5 Ps, do your knowledge blocks, have your, writing styles locked in, do your ICPs, all of those things. What Chris is doing now, that's the stuff that comes quickly. That's your optimization and your innovation. But you can't skip over the foundational parts. That still has to take the time that it takes to get it right. But then you can do all of this really cool stuff with it.
I'm concerned about, I know Kelsey had Gemini doing a lot of weird stuff for her yesterday. So we've got a real live without a net going today.
So the prompt there is, we have the brand style guide, which contains what you have to use for our brand standards, fonts, colors, logos, etc. We have Katie's writing style guide, and we've said using these client technologies. Let's see if we can get get Gemini to put something in the canvas. Part of the reason, by the way, that Gemini was having issues is Google is in the midst of a major revamp. On the 17th of June is when the next edition of Gemini models is expected to be released, including an updated version of Gemini Flash, which is very exciting. By the time folks consume this show and its byproducts, that will probably be available to everyone. But let's see. But that's why they have 7 new models that they are testing behind the scenes, which is kind of interesting. Hopefully, they pursue a better naming strategy than OpenAI.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing.
Well, OpenAI announced O3 Pro, which makes things even more confusing.
Which is better than 4?
Yes.
Yeah, that makes no sense.
All right, let's see. Let's take a look at what Gemini was able to come up with.
It's not bad, but where'd people go?
They move. That's weird. I didn't ask for that. There's definitely some debugging to go do here, but sound familiar? The Island of Stall AI Chaos. And then you have little mouse over hovers for each of the parts of the 5 Ps that kind of go wiggly off to the side, and then the call to action to the contact page and the destination.
It's not bad. It's something that I might stop and be like, what is that? Let me just check it out for a second and see if anything resonates with me. So it's at least, it might stop someone from scrolling for a hot second, which quite honestly is your first hurdle that you have to get over is, have you created something that's going to stop someone from constantly just going, nope, nope, nope. Okay. Because we're all, let's be honest, we all open social media so that we can disassociate for like 30 seconds. And if you don't see something that's going to stop you from scrolling, you're going to close it and forget about it. So you need to be able to create something that at least stops someone in their disassociation tracks for like a hot second, so they'll at least see what it is you've created. Because we spend so much time, we put our heart and soul into creating these things that people are just like thumbing past. And you're like, nope, nope, nope.
So one of the things we could do from this point is to try to get it to adjust all the different pieces and things. So give it the images, say like, hey, so there's some debugging to do. I think that would be fine. However, that's not the only form of content that Gemini outlined. Gemini also said, hey, audio will work. Strategic Sarah likes podcasts. Say, using Katie's writing style provided and her original post, let's build a speaking script for Katie to read aloud as a short podcast episode of her own podcast, Ranty Pants, that builds on her original LinkedIn post, laser focused on Strategic Sarah. Use the canvas for the speaking script. Focus on speakability. So for those who don't know, speakability is how you condition writing so that it can be read aloud. One of the challenges that a lot of people have is that when they write, that's not how they talk. So if then you go to read it aloud, it becomes very difficult for you to read the guide. Like you're stumbling over words. You've got words like diphthong in there that makes absolutely no sense to you.
Yeah, thanks for that, by the way. So for context, I actually record a video version of our newsletter, and I read the cold open, which I create, and the data diaries, which Chris creates. And I promise you, every week he throws in words just to trip me up.
I don't do it intentionally.
I think you do. I think subconsciously it brings you joy.
Subconsciously, possibly, but if I actually did it, it would be a lot more painful. All right, so we've gone ahead and created a speaking script here. Let's go ahead and just open this up in Google Docs so we can see what it looks like. And there is Ranty Pants, the AI Marathon Hangover. Hi there, Katie over here. Ranty Pants reporting for duty. And so it now has gone from a shorter post to a decently sized one. So let's take this. I'm going to clean this up just a little bit by putting a couple more line breaks into it. And I'm going to do this in a text editor because what we're going to do is we're going to save this as a speaking script. So we're going to process lines contain, get rid of the stage cue directions. We don't want those. And we'll trim off the name because we don't need that. This looks good. And we'll call this speaking script. Now we go to a tool like 11 Labs. And let's go into the 11 Labs studio. We're going to create an audiobook. And we're going to upload that speaking script right here. And we can use Katie's actual voice.
Man, you guys don't even need me anymore.
And let's see how it. You won't be able to hear anything on the. Actually, no, I can share this. Hang on, let me stop sharing, and then reshare just that tab with the tab's audio. Let's see if this works.
Hi there, Katie Robert here, Ranty Pants reporting for duty. So let's talk. Let's have a real conversation about the elephant in the server room. Remember 2 years ago, the absolute frenzy around generative AI? It was the new gold rush. Every board meeting, every all hands, every single conference was buzzing with it. Your CEO, your stakeholders, maybe even your mom was asking, so what's our AI strategy?
Not bad.
It's not bad.
Not bad. It's a little fast.
John, would you be able to tell that that's not me?
Yeah, Katie Robert was the giveaway right out of the gate. So.
That's fair.
Yes,
but
exactly.
Those are easily fixable things.
Yeah, you can do things like add sound effects.
Oh, I'm going to get some rim shots in there for all the jokes I tell.
Absolutely. Lasers. Need lasers.
Amazing.
Exactly. So
some
now
air horns. Pew, pew, pew.
Now we have the audio podcast version. And by the way, this speaking script is a longer version that now can become blog content as well. It can be styled up and things. So we've now created an infographic that is somewhat interactive. We have created a podcast. We have episode of Ranty Pants, and we have created a blog post out of it. So from one LinkedIn post, we've now transited through these 3 different things. For demonstration purposes, because it's not mentioned, it's recorded in here that it would actually be not a great idea to do a long form video because Strategic Sarah doesn't have time for this. So maybe we can create something that is short form. So let's go and think through. Let's think through based on the idea of the bridge to ROI of a short video script for a generative AI video tool to create. Each scene will be approximately 4 to 6 seconds long. Now, Katie, you are a film person. You have experience in film. So let me ask you, what are the things that belong in a shot list that we could focus
on? Man, it's been a minute, but you definitely want to have, point of view setups. I'm gonna basically bungle all the terminology because it's been a very long time. But so if you have like a one shot or a 2 shot. So if you have like a talking head, for example, are you doing the talking head sort of like we are now, where John and I are both basically shoulders up? Is it centered? Is it something where you have a 2 shot where you cut back and forth from different angles? You have lighting in there, you have audio in there. What kind of thing is in the background? Are you actually changing scenery? So like, is it going to be more like a newscast where it might be a short, 2-minute thing, but I'm walking down the street, doing an interview? Are there other people in the video? So like, you want to factor in like, what is it that you're doing? You're almost kind of writing out sort of what the storyboards would be so that you're giving generative AI enough information that it's not just going to have to guess at. So I think you want someone who's, standing in the middle of the ocean and they're trying to, catch a lion. And then they're also telling you about this strategy thing. Like, you don't want to have AI guess at that stuff. So if we're saying, use the bridge to ROI, you might say Katie is like standing on one side of the bridge, and by the end of the video, she's at the other end of the bridge. Or if you don't want to have all that complexity, then it's just a talking head. So those are the kinds of things you want to think about. So think about writing out basically what you would have in a storyboard. So if you have an idea in your head of what you would want the video to look like, give that information to generative AI. Don't let it guess.
Okay, well, let's see what it comes up with in terms of a set of prompts. Because one of the things we want to do is we want to not just come up with the idea, but we also want to structure it as prompts that we can feed to a video generation system of some kind. And that's one of the reasons why, particularly with today's video generation models, you do need to specify things like audio. If there is a voiceover, things like sound effects, visual effects and stuff. So let's see what the Bridge to ROI video script comes up with.
And I also just kind of want to mention too, so we're using generative AI to create all these different versions of the content. Once you have the speaking script, which we had, prior to doing this exercise, you could just open up, StreamYard or something else and record it. That's likely what I would do as someone who feels more comfortable on camera just reading it. I would use the speaking script, create a video, and then pull the audio out as the audio content. And then I would have the video and the audio. So you can use generative AI to get you to a certain point and then use your traditional methods, or you can use generative AI for all of it. There is no right way to do it.
Mm-hmm. And it's going to depend on what tools you have access to as well.
Yeah,
because
your skill level, the tools, your time, all of those things.
Exactly. So let's see. I stuck this into. I don't think that prompt will actually fit inside Google Videos. Let's take a look. Yeah, no, that didn't even come close to fitting inside there. However, it does fit inside Flow. Flow, for those who are unfamiliar, is if you are a Google AI Pro or Ultra member, allows you to use the new VO models to generate the actual video. It does take time. It takes a decent amount of time for each video, even for the ones that are relatively small. So I'm using the VO3 fast model. If I was going to do this for, say, like a paying customer, I would use the VO3 quality model, which will give you like really, really nice results. This will just give you a hack job. I did this the other day for a friend, and it got the physics of eating a cinnamon roll incorrect. And so you see this person start taking a bite and they just shove the whole thing in their mouth all in one shot. You're like, wow, that
physics is absolutely accurate. You shove a whole cinnamon roll. John, back me up here. You don't take dainty bites of a cinnamon roll.
You just chow the cinnamon roll, yeah.
Okay.
Right, there's our dark and stormy approach, yeah.
It's very theatrical.
It is very theatrical. So, I mean, that would be the first scene that you would have in this thing. And then you would feed it scene by scene. And then in a tool like Premiere or whatever, you will have to glue everything together. Right. But it did a very credible job of that first scene. So the first scene, if we go back to the document here, is first person point of view. We see Hans holding a tablet showing a plummeting red line graph, then a dark and stormy change to the island of despair. And so we could put in now the second frame and let it generate that as well. Now, we're not going to do this whole thing here because that would take quite some time, but
sure, you
would now have anywhere from 8 to 30 seconds worth of stuff.
Now, is this the kind of system where, in addition to the prompt, you can upload things like a headshot or a style guide to kind of keep it on track? Or is that beyond the capabilities and it's just going to kind of generate whatever it feels like?
You can if you are an Ultra member, which is the ingredients to video, which costs $250 a month.
Yeah, so we're not an Ultra member. So let's be clear about that. But that's good to know. Like, again, sort of understanding what you have access to before you go in and say, I'm going to use generative AI to create all this stuff. This is why you want to do your planning with the 5 Ps. When you get to the platform, understanding what you have access to, what you can use, So you may not have access to Ultra, you may have the basic free version. So then that means that your prompts are going to have to be more detailed, or you're going to have to do it the old fashioned way and pick up a camera and go shoot something outside in real life. Go figure.
Yep, you actually could do that. The other thing is knowing what your platforms have available. So one of the things that, for example, is extremely poorly documented is the Google Vids platform. So Google Vids is built into Google Workspace itself, and it is for workspace customers, and it has a version of VO that you can actually choose in here. You have to put much shorter prompts, but this does not require the same level of membership. You can't make as much, and it's not as high a quality, but it is still available to you if you're a workspace member. But they don't document this anywhere, which just drives me up a wall.
So could you, like, for example, animate your logo if you wanted to do something cool, like with a more limitation?
I don't believe you can do that with this version. This is just for just for generating stock imagery.
Okay. No, but again, that's sort of helpful to know, because if you're thinking, well, I want to make our logo like spin around or fade in, fade out, maybe that's not the right tool. Maybe you don't have access to the correct tool. Just, again, they sound like simple things, but then the next thing you know, you've spent like 3 or 4 hours down a rabbit hole trying to find out how to do it in a tool that will just never do it.
Mm-hmm. Here's the bridge to ROI.
No.
It's very cinematic.
We got there somehow magically.
That's got a full-on movie trailer feel to it.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and that's part of, because of what we put in the prompt is how to do that. So even in a case like that, you can specify like what is the style and the scenery and things. And so if you're going to create this, say, short form video for LinkedIn, if you want to put up as a LinkedIn video, you could absolutely start sewing these things together and then reformatting them. So where we've ended up is to say that this is no longer a start in one place and make everything else. This is now start anywhere and turn anything into anything. So we've done some short form video already. We've done an audio podcast. We've got our blog post that we've made out of this thing. We've got our interactive infographic that we've made out of this thing. Take your pick as to what strategic Sarah would want to have.
So, one of the things that we pride ourselves on at Trust Insights is our frameworks, and our frameworks being something that people can, start at the beginning and, end, and then have something to show for it. With what we're talking about here, there really is no framework per se, because you're saying like there's no starting point, there's no ending point. And so how do we revise this framework so that it's something tangible and usable? Like, are there logical steps that someone could take? So yes, they can start with just a short LinkedIn post and create all of these things with it. But if we're thinking about content repurposing, is there another way to think about this framework so that someone who's maybe newer to repurposing content could be like, okay, I can do this? Because what we're talking about is like, you can start anywhere, you can create anything. That's overwhelming, which is why these frameworks exist, to give people a starting place.
So if you think about this framework is all about destinations and formats and things like that, right? Here's the different places you can go, you can put your stuff and things. That's just one of the 5 Ps. So a generative AI transmedia framework would more closely follow the 5 Ps. Start with your purpose, understand what you want to get as an objective. Who is the audience? Use your ICP. And then you can start talking about, okay, well, what's the process for reaching that ICP, as we did with Gemini, to say, okay, how are we going to target this? And then you can say, from that, pick your piece of content and put it in the platforms to transform it based on what the purpose and the performance are, so that you end up with a result that is likely to reach. So when we talked with Gemini, the where we would stop in this instance would be just that interactive, because that, from what our ICP says, this is what they want. They want to be able to look at this, consume this, and then move on with their day. The cinematic VO3 thing is so cool, and it's so fun, and it's so not what our ICP cares about.
So it sounds like there's two versions of the framework. The generative AI transmedia framework uses more of that foundational data so that you are focusing and targeting specific parts of your audience, whereas the video first transmedia framework is very tactical. I have a piece of content. How can I pull it apart and do a lot of things with it? So both are valid, but they're not the same.
They're not the same. Yeah. Today's transmedia framework from a tactical perspective would be to start with your seed content in the middle and then have branches that explode in every direction of, hey, here's, use generative AI to transform into this, into this, into this, into this, in any given direction. So that people could see here are the possibilities: interactives, video games, songs, pop songs, music videos, you name it. From that idea, from that seed, that starting point, you can transform it into all these different channels. And that's more of a, again, it's not, I don't love the expression. It's one of those consulting expressions, but it's the art of the possible diagram. Here's the starting seed. Here's the art of the possible to everything you could turn this into.
So rather than a video first, it's a content repurposing.
It's a content repurposing. It's almost an idea first, right? Or
which makes sense.
Yeah, you start with something. You had an idea, a Ranty Pants post, and we turned it into a cinematic, glowing bridge of ROI.
Now, to bring it back sort of very meta in terms of repurposing, will you be taking the transcript from this live stream, bringing it into Gemini to try and create a new visual for the idea content repurposing framework, or whatever we're going to call it?
We would do the first draft in Gemini and then hand it off to Claude, because Claude is better at these kinds of diagrams. It produces more correct code the first time around.
Interesting. Okay. John, when are we going to see that, cinematic video of marketing over coffee?
Right, exactly. We didn't be able to jump. I think the one thing is this solves the technology problem for vendors. It doesn't solve the time problem. You still need to, take the time to make these other channels and work these other channels. But for so many small organizations, it's all about they don't have the talent. They can do some audio, they can write blogs, but they just don't have the bandwidth and the tools to do video. And so now this opens up a whole door for them, to be able to crank this kind of stuff out. So yeah, unfortunately, another task on the marketing over coffee list is not much help, but there's been tons of clients we've talked to that will eat this up.
Yep. And for something like marketing over coffee, where you'd want to go with that eventually is to build, and we've talked about this in previous episodes, building a full automation. So you would drop in the MP3 file, you would have speech to text, ASR, automatic speech recognition, translate it, and then maybe turn just each episode into a one-pager. Like, hey, if you can't listen to this episode, here's the one-pager of what you need. Make sure you subscribe to the Marketing Over Coffee newsletter to get, this week's one-pager.
Yeah, I like it. I look forward to seeing that newsletter, John.
Right, yeah. Because we're way on top of the newsletter. Doing well recently.
Maybe on a future live stream, we build that automation from scratch. Because it'd be a Python script. It would pull the MOC RSS feed, find the MP3, put it through Parakeet, put it through an LLM to turn it into the one pager, and then publish the one pager to WordPress.
I think you guys have a great idea there. I can't wait to see it.
I think that's next week's live stream, John.
We've got the topic locked down. We're good to go.
Yeah.
All right. That's going to do it for this week's So What? Thanks for tuning in, folks, and we will talk to you all on the next one. Thanks for watching today. Be sure to subscribe to our show wherever you're watching it. For more resources and to learn more, check out the Trust Insights podcast at trustinsights.ai/TI podcast and a weekly email newsletter at trustinsights.ai/newsletter. Got questions about what you saw in today's episode? Join our free Analytics for Marketers Slack group at trustinsights.ai/analytics for marketers. See you next time.